So it is with great honor I present to you our three panelists. First of all, we have Deborah Keller Green. Deborah is president and CEO of her business, and she has a consulting firm. A couple of things you want to know about Deborah: 10 years plus as a in business advisory experience, 20 years as a small business operations in HR management, bachelor's degree in business administration from Notre Dame of Maryland, no, Notre of Maryland University, and at Goldman Sachs. Yeah, thank you. Goldman Sachs. You've got Chris Barber here, who's I know is a Goldman Sachs graduate as well. One fun fact you want to know about Deborah: her son is a baseball coach, prominent Baltimore high school. He was featured on Fox 45 News Sports segment during Black History Month this year about the legend of the Negro Baseball League. He spoke about challenges in recruiting Black high school students for the sport. He probably could have used her tips for onboarding talent. Wonderful. Our second presenter, David Winkos. David is the Lead Rhino. He has his consulting business to assist business owners. 30 years success in sales, management, leadership, professional development, owned and operated successful businesses. He's an entrepreneur at heart, trained and certified with over 10 years of experience in administering, evaluating, and training individuals and teams on the results of the extended DISC and divine inventory behavioral assessment. So again, a great resource for you. Fun fact you want to know about David Winkos: he was awarded multiple all-conference honors in NCAA collegiate swimmer at Emory University. And he remains a competitive athlete today when his shoulder's not out of commission. So lastly, we have Brenda McChristen. Brenda is a CEO of her business, Spectrum HR Solutions. She has her master's in business and HR management certifications with SPHR, SHRM. And one fun fact you want to know about Miss Brenda: she is an avid horse lover. So that leads to great mental health. So you've got a great panel today to present to you. And I'm going to kick it off with just one simple comment. This topic is really near and dear to me, and I know to Sam as well. At Better Business Bureau, we have 23 employees. In all our sales staff, anybody related to business development, we use DISC. We have used CVI in the past. We currently use CVI for our operations staff. We are avid users. This summer, we will be using DISC for all staff, bringing people together in teams in this remote environment. We really need to stay connected. And I believe these assessment tools are one way in which we can strengthen our connection in the remote environment. So clearly, you guys are preaching to me, the choir, because we use them, I believe in them, and I'm so thrilled to bring this topic to you. So I will stop talking because you are here to hear our experts. David, I'm going to let you kick it off.
Okay, happy to kick it off. I suppose I'll start just simply by saying I have become a fan of, I became a fan of assessments due to a personal anecdote that I'll share. I'm divorced, remarried, and not unlike a lot of people, I had a very difficult time communicating with my ex-wife, particularly when it came to issues relating to our kids. And for, I guess, 5 years, it had descended and gotten less and less pleasant. And then I was introduced to DISC, and extended DISC was the tool that we used, but it's all based on the same platform. And as I learned, DISC is very specific. It is not a tool to evaluate somebody's strengths or competencies related to a job. It's more about their communication methodology. How do they interact with somebody? What are their preferences? And by learning I found out a lot of what I thought she was saying was my filter, and a lot of what she thought I was saying was her filter, and we operated very differently. And over 4 years, I had been asking for changes to the visitation agreement and had failed every single time. And in one single sit down, once I learned about DISC, uh, I got everything done. And since that time, since that day, we haven't had a fight. And I've seen, to me, that's a very real but very extreme example of one area that an assessment can come into play. Uh, but I've seen it in business so often. How many times have you met a salesperson who just doesn't get you, or you don't get them? And so we work with salespeople constantly, or I have worked with salespeople constantly, teaching them how to understand a prospect's communication style and adapt to it. Because if they keep being themselves and it doesn't jive with a prospect, they're going to lose them even if they have the right message. It's not being delivered the right way. So that's one area that I'm a fan, and I can get into that as we go along. But I'll be quiet at this point and pass the baton. See if somebody else wants to pick up another area, or if there are questions.
Deborah, Brenda.
I'll go next. That's a segue. And well, I too am a fan of DISC assessments. I have had the opportunity and the privilege to consult in the area of career advising, where we advised individuals who at Verizon as a career advisor for upward mobility. It was a tool that they used, assessment tools that they use for providing upward mobility for downsizing. So Verizon wanted to, prepare their employees for retirement or, buyouts. And, so they hired consultants to be career advisors. And the DISC assessment tool was one of my favorites to use with team building. Because it does help one to, as David said, to kind of understand that the way people communicate, that it brought up, it allows more objectivity in your communications rather than, understanding that a person's style of communication might be direct, but you don't take it personally, and so forth. So I too learned to appreciate the DISC assessment, but I've also, in workforce development, I've also learned that they're both formal and informal assessment tools. So those formal assessment tools are ones that, where you need to be, certified in applying. You want to make sure that you have people who are certified to administer. But there are also some informal assessment tools that you can, create yourselves in terms of pre-hiring and, pre-employment assessments. The very ones that you don't even know our assessment tools are. You use your resumes to identify experience, skills, and so forth. You use your job descriptions to communicate what you're looking for in employment. You use your interviews to identify, key performance indicators that you're looking for. So all of these are sort of informal, but they can be, and they should be customized for your particular need. And then I think it was Angie who said that it's also used for business, to for overall, improvement in your business organizational performance in terms of your meeting your HR goals, performance reviews, using assessments for professional development, and overall communications in terms of performance management. So I am a fan, and I am also a fan, but I know that there are some legal requirements, and I know that Brenda is very well versed in compliance. So it's an important thing to kind of understand what the legal ramifications are in applying assessments as well. So that's what I would add.
I'll jump in unless Brenda wants to jump in on the spot, but I just wanted to, one of the things that we bumped into was very often we'd have clients concerned about utilizing assessments because they were concerned about the legality of discriminatory practice. And I'm certain that there are many ways to use them inappropriately that could create issues. But one of the things about utilizing them as a tool is they actually can remove discriminatory practice because the assessment doesn't have eyeballs. They're not going to judge somebody based on their gender or their color they are judging on the same set of criteria. They're simply looking at answers to questions. And so therefore it actually becomes one way of leveling an evaluation. So that can be used the wrong way. It can be a problem. Used the right way, it can be a very significant protection.
David, before you go on, I think Maureen had a question. Maureen, I think I saw you.
I do. I'm particularly interested. I'm a career transition coach, and I would be interested in any tools, opinions about tools that people use to find strengths or niches for careers. I've been coaching on a one-to-one basis, and I'm going to group coaching, and you can't go as in depth with 10 or 15 or 20 people in a room. So I want to set them up to use a tool ahead of time and then have an in-depth discussion about questions and results and things like that.
So if I could jump in, yes?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Actually, that's a good segue because there is a tool that you might be interested in called the PDP Proscan, and that's the Proscan, the Professional Dynametric program. We've been using that for the last this particular tool for the last 5 years. And Deborah, to your point about the compliance issues, there's no question about it. You have to make sure that the tools that you use are valid, that they meet the validation requirements under EEOC. The Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection is actually kind of a guidebook, provides a guidebook on how to use assessments and then make hiring decisions based on the results of those sessions or the results of the assessments so that you're meeting all of the Title VII guidelines. And what we have found is, and I'll tell you, I'm not so much a fan of pre-employment assessments because there are so many of them out there. You don't know which ones are valid, and many are saying they're valid, but they're not. They have not met the definition of reliable and construct validity, which is the issues that get you into a little bit of trouble because you're still making a subjective judgment around who you're going to hire regardless. So even if you have a band range where you're going to hire everyone who scores between 80 and 100, you still have to do a validity test to determine whether or not you're screening. Now, those who are in a diverse workforce, those who may not be able to reach the 80 without specific guidance and training. So we're more of a fan, and we've had great success with the Proscan, and I'll tell you why. We have found that our clients are getting better ROI when they are using assessments internally for the staff that they currently have. And there are a couple reasons for that. And I'll give you an example. But one of the reasons is that we can hire all the best talent in the world. If they walk into an environment that has poor morale, that is not supported by leadership, that doesn't provide these A candidates with the kind of growth and development they need, they're going to leave. So we use the assessments internally with the organizations first. We test we use the Proscan actually as a leadership development tool, and it has really been incredibly successful. One of the examples I wanted to point out was that we were working with an organization where a director was managing about 15 people. There was a revolving door of employees coming and going in that particular department, and this was a department of a larger organization. And this person was put on performance improvement plans and sent to training, and nothing worked. So what we did was look at the ways in which communication was not happening in that organization. And we used the Proscan as a means of understanding how, or showing how individuals communicate differently, sort of like the DISC. And oh, by the way, I'm a DI. And if we go Myers-Briggs, I'm an ESFJ. So, but we use certified coaches and counselors to strategically use these or to administer the Proscans. And then we spend some time with them so that they understand their communication styles, they understand their coworkers' communication styles. And to be more specific, the individual that we were working with in her department, we saw almost immediate improvement, which is, we just thought this is somebody who can't be saved. And we would never tell her that, but we thought it was somebody who could not be saved. And she fought the process. However, the process, if we're using neutral and valid assessments, and we're showing the results of somebody else's, of her particular scores and how she affects the team, and the team had an opportunity to provide in a safe environment, to provide their feedback without fear of retaliation, they started to develop tools that helped them work more cohesively. Her turnover went down. This was 2 years ago, and she is a star. And we have found that in the last 5 years, we've done more to keep employees in the organization. Obviously, employees, they're 10, what is it? The 10 top reasons employees stay is because they obviously, they have a purpose. There's transparency in the organization. They believe that they can contribute. They, of course, reward is important, but those are not the absolute top 5. And this is across all generations. We have 5 generations in the workforce, and every last one who's been tested or who've been surveyed say these are their top 10 reasons they stay with their employers. And the Proscan, Maureen, actually addresses those behavioral pieces and the communication pieces. And it gives them tools that they can take with them, not just, and to David's point, not just for the work, but at home, in their neighborhoods, in their communities. So it's almost transformative without being intimidating.
Yeah.
It's worth jumping in. What I have seen very often is a lot of the tools get used the wrong way because the people utilizing them, and I don't mean to necessarily say the person, if somebody brings me in to do DISC for their company, not necessarily in my role, but the person in the company, that leader doesn't understand the purpose or what the tool actually accomplishes, and they misuse it. I have heard of people saying, oh, you tested out this way or that way in DISC, and so we can't hire you for this job. Except it's not a valid way to use DISC.
That's right.
There is no classification that DISC will ever come up with that can determine somebody is or isn't good for any job. What's more, it's never going to evaluate the person. It's evaluating the person's answers to the questionnaire. And that's where validity becomes critically important, is the consistency with which answers and the resulting reports or the resulting assessment is accurate to the person. And that's where the clinical trials and the repetitions and the volume and testing over history becomes important. So asking those questions about there are some tremendous assessments. There are some assessments that are well known that I don't like at all. And there are assessments that aren't very well known, but I really like their underlying structures. So understanding how they're built and what they're trying to do is important, and defining what are you trying to get out of the assessment. There are assessment tools that would be horrible hiring tools. There are assessments that are terrific hiring tools. And there are assessments that are great for evaluating how can we help somebody develop? How can we help a team communicate? How can we determine, is somebody ready to be promoted? Is somebody does somebody have the tools for leadership? Because that's a huge toolbox. Sure. Leading other people that's very different than most jobs that aren't leadership. And so getting into those things, there's just a ton of different tools and they're designed differently.
Yeah. So I have been talking to my computer because my internet seems to be going in and out. So if you hear me talking, I'm talking to my computer. So, but I wanted to go back to add to Maureen's question about career development and, how to specifically, some of the tools that are specifically good for, working in individual and groups for career assessments. And when you're looking for careers, it's always, there are some assessments, I won't give you specifics, but there are some assessments in learning styles that will help in, identifying career, career exploration. If you're in a, if you're talking with students who are, trying to maximize their learning, it was self-discovery. It was a good self-discovery for me to learn what my particular learning style is, to excel. Also, looking at, one's interest and how one's interest and abilities, those assessments that look at interest and abilities that can kind of guide them toward the kind of work that they enjoy. And so I just wanted to, add that bit to answer your question specifically regarding the use of assessments for career development. I will also, what Brenda and David have shared in terms of using assessments for management, as a management tool in terms of performance management, improving communications within your organization. It's understanding and being able to identify the tool that is best suited for your organization. So, to David's point, you have to know what it is that you want to measure. What are you measuring, and what kind of decisions are you trying to make in looking at the type of assessment tools that that are right for you. So team building, career development, pre-employment screening. And to Brenda's point, in terms of pre-employment screening, I think you really do need to understand and really make you know, it really does require some customization in terms of any kind of assessments, in terms of how you structure your interviews for pre-employment, so that you're identifying, you know, performance objectives and so that they address your particular needs, and understanding how those tools can work best for you in terms of pre-employment. I wouldn't recommend that you go pull something off the shelf, because that is an internal, that's something that as a business owner, you know what performance, you know what you're looking for. And those, I'm a big proponent of behavioral interviewing, because it tells a lot in terms of, you know, just identifying those specific performance factors that you're looking for, the kind of you know, job related skills that you're identifying, the characteristics, and you know, so I just wanted to, you know, add that those informal tools are just as important as the formal ones in terms of you know, making sure that you use the tools that are best suited for your business. And I would consult with experts just to make sure that you know, you are getting the most out of what you're trying to achieve. So contact David, myself, or Brenda.
I see that there's a question from Janet, and it was one I was chomping at the bit. The generalities, you know, if we could get into specifics. Her question is, in addition to DISC, are you able to share information about other specific assessments and the best purpose for their use? And that was my exact question. So thank you, Janet, so much. David, could you kick us off with other specific assessments? And by the way, all the ones that are mentioned, I'll get the team to put them, get us links so I can send them out. We will send them out after this presentation, so you have the links to them. David?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put a caveat right up front. I'm going to mention some that I'm familiar with and that I like, but a very specific example, the PDP Proscan, I'm not familiar with that one. I can't comment. So what I talk about does not mean that it's better, worse. It may be completely different. It may be similar then. So please do not take this as a statement that they're the best. They're simply the ones that I know. I am certified, well, I was certified in an assessment called the Divine Inventory. The reason I say was, Divine Inventory was purchased by a company called Outmatch, and they have the Divine no longer exists in its form. It's now run by Outmatch, and it looks different. The difference is appearance. The underlying concept is still one that I'm a very big fan of. It breaks down a person's occupational preferences or predilections into 33 different categories. And then they have job models that take those 33 different behaviors in different combinations to create competencies. And the one I was most familiar with Divine was a salesperson job model that had 19 different competencies. Then the competencies were things like questioning and qualifying, controlling close, asking questions, takes action, self-responsibility, self-awareness. And within each of those, they were a combination of these different behavioral skills. And the behavioral skill, it was always a little uncomfortable having it called a skill, because it wasn't defining how good or bad somebody was at it, but more how natural it was. And so the way I used to describe it to somebody is, it was kind of talking about right hand, left hand. I'm right-handed. I could with a ton of practice, learn to write very well with my left hand, but there's no way it's ever going to become more comfortable. And we tend to move towards the things we're most comfortable. So if I wanted somebody who was an accountant, I'm going to look for somebody who is more naturally inclined towards detail orientation, because it's going to be more comfortable for them. They're less likely to burn out and things of that nature. Once you have the model like that, you then have to be able to bring a questionnaire that takes somebody through. You want to defeat gamesmanship, particularly when you're dealing with job applicants. It's natural to want to answer it in the way that the assessor wants it answered, as opposed to most authentic. And so it has to be structured well, that it becomes hard to game the test. And with both Divine and the Outmatch assessments, they are set up as forced choice, meaning, do you prefer this or this? And they're meant to be really, you struggle with them because you don't like either one, or you like both of them. Pick a scale between, and then it'll go a whole load of questions, and then it'll come back and it'll phrase a question very similarly, and it's looking for consistency in the answers. And by getting consistency, it then becomes more validated of a response. So I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of the predictive index. I do find that the predictive index is, the questionnaire isn't quite, it doesn't have that forced choice the same way. And so there is a little bit more potential for manipulation of the result, but their tools, what they do with their assessments, their ability to utilize the evaluations are impressive. And PI has been around for, I believe, better than 50 years, and it's continued to evolve, but the data is there to support the validity of their results. They're utilized by a massive number of big name organizations. The other one that I'll mention, and it's one that I'm a fan of. I was only introduced to it last year, and it's really inexpensive, and it's something great for self-development. This is from Gallup organization, Clifton Strength Finder. The book's available on Amazon for $17, $16.95. And the book is actually not the reason to buy it. In the back of the book, there's a code, and you can go on and take the assessment. It gives you the code for one free assessment, and then you get the report. And the report simply evaluates on 34 different strengths where you are most inclined. And all the book is it's 34 chapters describing each of those different areas. So you can get a better sense of what the report is telling you about your strengths. And I found it very informative for my own personal development. One of the great challenges I think that we as people face is our blind spots, the areas that we're not aware of ourselves, the areas that we choose not to acknowledge, or for whatever reason we just haven't seen. And the assessments can be great tools for getting a look. If we're open to admitting that there are blind spots, it can be a great way of seeing those blind spots, and that's a way to move ourselves forward.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And again, we'll send links out, but I'd love to hear from Deborah and Brenda, the assessment tools, because go back to the question, we all know about DISC, or do you have other things you would like to highlight you've not been able to previously? So Brenda, why don't you give us some ideas of things, anything you would like us to take away?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I do like, in addition to the Proscan, I do like the LPI. The LPI is again, another internal tool, because that we have more successes with when we're working within an organization, and organizations themselves learn a little bit more about who they are, what they do, and how they do it. it forces into organizations to really look at the skills, knowledges, and abilities of their current workforce in an effort to accomplish and achieve their overall business goals. So what all that means is that if we assess someone, we get their results back, and it shows various strengths in different areas. For example, they're strong communicators, or they're strong thinkers, or they're strong analysts. Are they in the right positions? And it also forces us to look at the job description, because oftentimes these assessments are built on job descriptions that have no meaning anymore in an organization. Jobs morph over time. Every time somebody takes a position, they come in and they add their own skills, knowledges, and abilities. And that job usually changes as the business changes. So one of the other tools, other than the LPI, is that Proscan. We've used also DISC, which we've also mentioned, and we've also used the predictive index, which is a really good one. But most of our efforts are focused internally, because unless an organization understands clearly what competencies they're looking for in order to achieve their goals and objectives, there's going to be that revolving door where employees are coming in and out because perhaps they don't fit into the culture. The culture is toxic. There are individuals who don't have to do it. They don't have to be in organizations that are not supportive and not developmentally focused. So that's what we're learning. I know in the last year with COVID and employees trying to return to work or not return to work, it's just a host of other critical pieces that employees are dealing with, and so are employers. So what I really want to end up in saying is that no matter what assessment tool is used, and there are so many out there, A, make sure that it is valid and meets the criteria for the uniform guidelines on employee selection. B, make sure that your employee, or that you understand what the job actually needs to do for the organization. Oftentimes we think job descriptions are, just sort of a tool that, or not even a tool, but a descriptive list of duties. But those duties have to relate to productivity, and they have to relate to results. Make sure that those competencies are assessed and evaluated, and so you've got an accurate job description. So when you use those assessment tools, your employees are meeting those objectives. Mm-hmm. And then finally, make sure that you're using other tools, such as use those, and Deborah mentioned it earlier, use those tools called behavioral interview questions. Don't forget that you are the best judges of what it takes to be successful in your organization. And those behavioral interviews, we use a method called the STAR method. And many of you probably know about the STAR method, where you're giving situational questions to applicants that are all related. The STAR: situation, describe a situation, tell me about the task, what action did you take, and what were your results? Those are great behavior. And if you understand what you're asking your employees to do based on job descriptions, then they should be able to give you deep dive information around what it is they need to do to be successful in your organization. Done.
And so Brenda doesn't, so it's not missed what Brenda said there. I just want to throw this in, that the questions should be past based. It's very easy to ask an interview question about what would you do if, but I can tell you all the glorious things I would do if, and what a hero I could be if. Mm-hmm. But if you ask me to give a specific example in the past where I dealt with this and had to, when I start to stutter and look up at the sky,
Mhm.
it'll get real obvious I'm making it up because I never did that.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so we want to hear about specific instances where they demonstrated that. And so
Yeah.
that situation, it's not a situation of in our mind creation, but a situation that's occurred. We want to ask those past based because
Mhm.
we want to get, there's a lot of professional interviewers. There's a lot of people that have been on so many interviews. They know how to sound good.
Mhm.
And we've got to get past that. And that's where I believe the assessments get really valuable in interviews, is it tells you what areas to dive into. And most of the assessments that go in that direction will give sample questions, will give you a path of questions to ask. I pulled one up, so I had it beside me.
Okay.
You know, in an area like process orientation, describe the last time you prepared a sales call plan and what the plan included. Follow-up question, describe your format for a sales call agenda. Follow-up, how often is your sales call agenda written? Follow-up, do you share all or part of this with the prospect? And as I go along, I'm going to get to see where they're at.
But David,
So one thing I would like to
if I
add.
could jump in, hold on one quick thing, because you just, you hit on something key. Remember, the interviewer has to understand totally what they expect the candidate to do.
Yes.
Oftentimes we're I might be good at interviewing HR folks or accountants or whatever, but I'm not going to be any good maybe interviewing a maintenance tech because I have the slightest idea what HVAC, the difference between HVAC and CFC is.
Mhm.
So, I mean, but I do. I mean, technically I really do, but there are interviewers and managers who will use those and ask those questions, and they don't know they've been fed a load of it. Because there are some professional interviewers, folks that are really, really good. So you gotta drill down and understand what are they answering the question, and do they really know their stuff?
Yeah. So
Deborah, yeah, love to hear from you.
yes, I just wanted to provide a resource, just to complement what David and Brenda said in reference to the importance of understanding the job and defining the job through the job description. The U.S. Department of Labor has a resource called ONET, and it's an occupational skills database that I would recommend anyone who's hiring, who wants to fully understand how the Department of Labor defines an occupation. It breaks it down in great detail in terms of all of those factors that are taken under consideration in assessment. So it ties in key characteristics of the job in terms of what's involved in the job from a performance standpoint. So it's very detailed. And even at the end of that description, it gives you a code, an assessment code of what the assessment, what the interest assessment or the assessment code is for a person in that job. So it really is a great tool. Understanding how to describe their job, understanding what performance factors to assess during the interview. And back to David's point, in terms of being able to ask the right questions to really determine if a person if an applicant really understands or is really making up answers to the questions, you can kind of determine. And some of the best questions I like are, tell me about yourself. When you ask someone to tell them about yourself, you're really looking for if that person has the same interests and passions for the job, if they really understand the job that you are considering them for hiring for. And as David said, ask them to give examples, give examples of how they used, their experience in that particular area. And it will become, quite evident over time that whether or not that person really understands the job itself. The other one, another question that I like is, I like to find out if there is, at the end of the interview, asking if they have any questions. Is there anything else that you would like to share? This is their opportunity to have full disclosure as to whether they have anything in their background anything that I cannot ask you about, then it would be an opportunity for them to share information that would be relevant. How forthcoming are they? And what kind of information would they share with you? In those two questions, tell me about yourself, and giving them an opportunity to disclose information that you cannot ask during an interview. So I wanted to share that the ONET resource, and just to give a few more tips on the types of interview questions that can yield the feedback that you need to help make a good hiring decision.
And before we wrap up with a quick comment from our presenters, does anyone have any questions you would like to ask? Janet got my burning question, so thank you for that. But does anyone have a question you would like to ask before we do wrap up comments? All right, well, we are nearing the end of our time together, and would love to hear if there are any final words from Brenda, Deborah, and David as we bring closure to this presentation. I view this presentation, what I've learned from this is, the concept of making sure I understand my jobs and what everyone is doing, and that I am using an assessment tool for the right purpose. And that's very eye-opening. Brenda, sadly, you gave me a lot of homework here because I know I need to go back and look at my job descriptions now. So dang it, I'm walking away with homework. And but I would love to hear any parting comments that you guys have that you would like to offer. Brenda, would you like to go first?
Oh, thank you. And you hit the nail on the head. You're right. That is the basis for asking for this information and testing and assessing individual skills, knowledges, and abilities, right? Other than the behavioral aspects, are they going to be able to get along with others, play fair, and are they going to be able to come to work, which are more behavioral based and very important, because oftentimes past behavior is a predictor of future performance, as we all know. So whatever assessment tools you use, just make sure you understand what it is you are asking employees and your job applicants to do. And if you are bringing new people in, make sure that they are walking into an organization that is welcoming and that provides the appropriate onboarding support that new hires are going to need. That's it. Final words.
Deborah, you want to go?
Sure. I would just add that no assessment tool in and of itself is 100%. As David indicated, you need to really understand the validity of an assessment, and you have to really understand what you want out of that assessment and do your due diligence to get the most out of it. Would recommend a variety. You have to to look at a variety of tools to determine which one is best for you. Also, it's important to make sure that it fits the population that you're serving, because there is no one size fits all. I think Brenda indicated earlier that especially when you're using the skills assessment, you want the skills assessment for an office manager would be different from a clerical person. So you want to make sure that those assessments fit the population that you're serving, and that you maintain confidentiality. even though it's a great communication tool, confidentiality is important in utilizing and sharing those, how you use those communicate. Although it is a communication tool, you want to be mindful of confidentiality.
Thank you. And David, before we wind up, one of the things also I'm going to toss out there that's very thought-provoking that I will be following up with you guys on is also using these tools in the remote environment. That is, you mentioned this earlier, not necessarily for assessment of interviewing and performance or any of those, but using these tools to strengthen the communication. That is I want to make sure that this coming year, I'm very focused on not losing my culture as a result of this remote environment. So I want to thank you for more homework, because you've prompted me to go, I really need to be moving forward with that. So thank you for the homework. Yeah. David, you get the final words here.
So I'm going to echo something Deborah said, which is that treat all of the assessments. I don't care if the validity tests off the charts, treat them with a grain of salt, in that don't think that they are the tool, they are a tool. Look to confirm any results that no matter what you use, always look to talk to the person and confirm those results, because every assessment can miss. That's just, we're human beings, and that's the way it is. But they can give you a huge head start. Real quickly, is it possible for me to share my screen for a brief moment? I wanted to share a tool that I have I will tell everybody I have no investment in. I'm just a huge fan of it. And it goes to what Angie was just talking about a little bit. So Angie, I'm going to use you. I'm going to pick on you for a brief moment. Hopefully everybody is looking right now at my LinkedIn page. And on the side, there is a company called Crystal. Their website is crystalknows, KNOWS.com. And what they do, they use AI. There is a plugin for Chrome. I believe they probably have plugins for the other browsers, but I know I use Chrome. And when I go to somebody's profile, whether I'm connected with them or not, I can click, and Crystal, then you'll see it's reloading the page, pulling information as it does that. And it's going to, based on their profile and based on other information that they're able to pull from the web, based on what they pull from the profile, give me an estimation of their DISC. Now, my experience is it's about 75 to 80% accurate. So I know going in, I'm assuming it's going to have areas that are wrong, but it gives me a step in the right direction before I say the first thing. So if you're in business development, for me, this is a 100% of the time step in pre-call planning before I meet with somebody. Because if I know that somebody is, Angie, a moderate DI, tends to be results focused, likely thrives in a fast-paced environment, encouraging some risk. Behavior, DIs may naturally, DI types are most motivated by, types are most stressed by when speaking to. What I like is I need to gather information. For a DI, ask her urgent questions right off the bat, learn about her team's current efficiency, learn about her biggest goals. Don't share too much personal information about yourself. Don't take a reserved or subdued approach. Now, knowing Angie, this isn't dead on the mark, but I wouldn't hurt myself following these guidelines in a meeting with her if I didn't know her. So it's not free. They give you, I think, 10 for free, and then it's a monthly subscription of 20, 25, 29, somewhere in there, dollars per month. For me, it has more than paid for itself. So I just wanted to share that briefly, and I'm happy to give that tool and I'll put it in the chat, but that's something that I have found tremendously helpful. So.
And I am a huge D. I would say I don't have an
There
ISC.
you are.
I am so high D.
You're
It's,
off the charts, Angie.
yeah. And I don't have anything else. So way to go, David. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, to our presenters, again, I will use the word again, homework. And to our presenters, I know I will be following up. Thank you. You've given me so much thought-provoking information. So I am optimistic that our attendees got homework assignments as well. So really appreciate your time to everyone this morning. And you will be hearing from Better Business Bureau as a follow-up with any of the information our panelists are willing to share, links to resources, anything they would like to share with you. We'll include that in an email with, in addition, our upcoming presentations, event presentations, because through the end of May, we are focusing on Thursdays on HR issues. So to everyone on this beautiful sunny day, thank you for joining us. I hope that you remain hopeful, optimistic, and seek and strive to do better in everything we do. So thank you guys so much.